This one I'm actually quite excited about. It's called The Long Haul by Raka Tansky. It's going to be Fur Affinity this time. If that's any more exciting. It's not too terribly long. I haven't read a single line from it. I actually have no idea. I do know what it's about. Let's just go. That's good arsenic. Out in the deserts of the Wild West, a equine trotted down a dirt path with a hyena in its saddle. The hot sun beat down on the horse's back like the animal insulted its mother. Every inch of his light brown fur was coated in a putrid sweat. He was unfazed by his new shiny coat, but the hornbill taped to his backside didn't have the privilege. Zazu writhed in his duct tape bonds. He couldn't believe that the sweat didn't affect the stickiness enough to release him. I'm sorry, where do you get duct tape in Africa? Okay. Right. The hornbill was really starting to worry about his fetners. He spent all morning thinking about and regretting the near unbelievable and certainly indescribable series of events that led to his current putrid situation. With every step, the horse's fat cheek jiggled under the bird. That was the main reason Zazu hadn't fainted yet. They walked in general silence across the desert until the horse's tail raised. No. Zazu's pleas were cut off by... A windy fart filled the air around the horse's ass with an ungodly smell. Zazu thrashed about in the tape as the gas seeped into his beak. The scent was a mixture of rotten eggs and the ass of old roadkill. When the blast finally sputtered to a wet stop after nearly a minute, only one thought was left in his head, and that was, what the heck did this horse eat? To make things even worse, the horse had stopped in his tracks, letting Zazu simmer in the cloud. The chubby hyena at the reins nearly fell from the saddle. He was laughing so hard that he was teary-eyed at the poor bird. "Impeccable timing," he remarked before hopping down from the horse's back. "I'm going to be gone a bit. Why don't you take a rest?" The horse slowly began to descend. Gravity helped bring his ass to the dirt with an earth-shaking smack. When the dust settled, all that was left of Zazu was the tip of his beak. His groans of pain were drowned out by the hyena's cackles, but it was obvious every hollow bone in the hornbill was shattered. Wave after wave of pain shot through his body with each cruel laugh of the horse. "Please get off," he wheezed out in agony. The horse erupted in another organ-rupturing bout of laughter. Nope. The animal was not one of many words. "Get off." The horse's gas vibrated his cheeks, sending up a cloud of sand and more pain through the bird's destroyed body. Each pain gasp filled his flattened lungs with putrid hot gas. Zazu's beak, the only part of him that wasn't crushed, was burning, just like the rest. The bird didn't dare speak again, as the stink cloud was thick around the horse's tail end and his head. 20 minutes later, Rocky, the hyena, came back and inspected the bird, only to fill his own nose with the burning scent. He held his nose and mumbled a query about how the bird was still alive before hopping back on the horse's back. He rose, with Rocky back at his reins, and began to trot off. As they walked, Zazu peeled off and hit the ground with a thud. After being taped to the horse's sweaty rump all morning, the stickiness finally ran out. Zazu watched as the horse's hips sway as it walked away. He'd never been so happy to see an ass. Not hearing the bird's pitiful groans anymore, the hyena got suspicious. He looked at the horse's ass and nearly fainted from one whiff of its scent. He also noticed one less bird than usual. From his vantage point on the horse's rump, he was able to see Zazu lying half dead on the ground, around 4 feet away. "Back it up!" The hyena smirked and watched the bird carefully with sadistic glee as the horse walked backwards. Zazu's bloodshot eyes widened in horror as the horse lifted a black hoof above him. Crack! Snap! Pop! The hoof nearly covered the bird's entire body. A mixture of blood and spit shot from his beak. The slime shot as high as the horse's tail and splattered back down on his face. Luckily, he didn't have to bear the weight long as the horse kept walking. Crack! Snap! Crack! The horse's forehoof smashed down on his head. His beak took the brunt of the weight, though his skull still suffered multiple fractures. The hornbill's beak looked concaved and was lined with cracks. Too far, the hyena shouted between cruel laughs, as if he didn't plan for this entire extra trampling. The bloody back hoof slammed back down on the bird's body and stayed there this time. There were no sounds of snapping bones or popping organs. Zazu was pretty much a bag of blood at this point. The hyena hopped down and looked at the living remains of what was once a bird. Trying to escape, eh? He laughed. The horse lifted his hoof, and Rocky snatched up the bird. As punishment, we're going to put you in solitary confinement. Rocky got back on the horse with Zazu in paw. He lifted the horse's tail with his free paw, showing the bird a donut-sized, wet tail hole. Zazu was barely able to think or even see, but he knew the animal's plans in an instant. The hyena was barely able to feel his struggle as he brought the broken bird to the noxious, fume-filled hole. The horse's hull clenched around Zazu's broken beak and instantly pulled him in. The wet walls throbbed around the bird as his asshole engulfed the bird and nearly took Rocky's paw with it. Rocky yanked his toes from the equine asshole and gave the horse a rude look. Zazu's already destroyed body was contorted and crushed by the anal walls. Every breath filled his broken beak with ass juice and musk. He was amazed he was still conscious and wished he wasn't. The hyena and horse were able to enjoy the ride completely, knowing Zazu was suffering and smelling ass. As they trotted out of town and into the sunset, the horse raised his tail and a few feathers went flying from the horse's rump, and Rocky burst out laughing at the sight. "He's still squirming?" Rocky asked with a sadistic smile. With a wiggle of his hips, the horse responded, "Yup." Wow. I'd like to show you all the thumbnail that went with this story, which had me relatively confused at first, but now is 1000% concise. It's not as bad as most of the story, but there we are. How about that? Also, the first comment on the story is, says, "Damn, lucky bird." The response from the author is, "He's living the dream." I gotta go. I gotta leave forever.